Darkness is the absence of light. My guiding light, my grandmother, Willie Mae Harris, affectionately known as Granny. Granny taught me the value of prayer. She was my mentor. She put me into a position as being the oldest that I needed in moving from my tragedy into my triumph. Granny had a certain way of saying things. She made it real talk. She would say, baby or little girl, hold on to what you got and let the rest of it go. How often in our lives do we hold on to something that's dark when we should let it go? And that reminded me of a time when Philip and we was at a dinner party. And the host said, and she was Sergeant Major. She said, drill sergeant, because of my time in the Air Force. She said, can I talk to you about something? I said, absolutely, Sergeant Major. So she whispered so low, hardly audible to anyone standing near. That ride home, I began to reflect on the first time that I heard the words, Miss Thompson, you have breast cancer. Those words were dark. I would sit here, I stand here, and in the triumph, in the tragedy, I was 43 years old, senior master sergeant in the Air Force, married, and 3 kids. My first diagnosis was in 2005. I ended up having a mammogram. I ended up having a bilateral mastectomy. Then 5 years later, I had a reoccurrence. Cancer again. Chemo, radiation. As I sit there in the doctor's office, my hands begin to sweat. My voice begins to get tight. I couldn't believe the words that she was telling me that I had breast cancer. I looked behind me, wondering, I know someone's going to come in and say, doctor, those aren't Ms. Thompson's test results. But nope, it was my diagnosis and it was my results. I'm sitting there and I said, oh my gosh, how am I going to tell my family, my husband, my children, and my friends? So as I leave the doctor's office, the hospital, I walk slow. I finally get to my car and I sit. I'm contemplating, what am I going to do? How do I tell them that I have this diagnosis? I contemplate, maybe I shouldn't say anything at all. Maybe I should not even tell the truth. Maybe I shouldn't even pretend that it happened. I pick up the phone, I dial the numbers, and I hang up. I pick up the phone, I dial the numbers, and I hang up. I pick up the phone, I dial the numbers, and I hang up. Tanja, what are you going to do? What are you going to say? Pick up the phone, I dial the numbers, and I hang up. And it rings. My throat immediately goes tight. I hear Phil's voice on the other end. Tanja, Tanja. But I couldn't speak. And I said, sweetie, the doctor says I have breast cancer. breast cancer, the big C. It was dark. It was unforgiving. It was depressing. It didn't care that I was a senior master sergeant in the Air Force. It didn't care that I was a mother, that I was a sister, that I was an aunt. It didn't about none of those things. It was dragging me deeper and deeper and deeper into depression, hopelessness. It cared about none of those things. I began to not want to be around other people. It was changing me, my whole identity. I began to look in the mirror, not recognize who the other. Who do I see? Who's in this mirror? I don't recognize this person. Chemo, radiation, chemo. After my first treatment, my hair began to fall out. I would take a shower and it would just literally fall to the floor. I said, Phil, cut it off! Just shave it! Shave it, Phil! So he did. He said, sweetie, I never thought that I would be shaving my wife's head. I said, nor did I. So we gave my hair funeral. That's the picture of me right after my husband shaved my head. And then there was radiation. Oh, 3rd degree burns to my left chest. The burning of flesh, oozing in sores. It was so painful that I couldn't even wear a shirt. It was so strong that it penetrated to my back. And I still have the scars to today. I would often write in my journal. It was my only sense of sanity to get out, to understand. And as I would write, I remember, I'm a senior master sergeant in the Air Force. People look at me in admiration, not in pity, because people didn't know what to say. I would look in their eyes, and the eyes showed the fear, misunderstanding, depression, lack of hope. I then began to wonder, was those the reflection of my eyes looking at myself? Because sometimes people don't know what to say. We was at a dinner party, and then a friend of ours came over, and she said, and let me tell you about Miss Sally. Miss Sally knew how to cook. When as soon as she came in, I could smell the food, and it smelled so delicious. Because Phil liked to put a lot of spice in his food, so, I wasn't feeling too good. So Miss Sally's sitting there, and she says, Tanja, how are you doing? I said, oh, I'm doing good, Miss Sally. She says, well, how long do doctors give you? I said, I took a step back and I was like, she said, well, how long they give you to live, Tanja? I said, well, Miss Sally, they haven't put it on the calendar yet, but you would be the first to know when they do. That Miss Sally. I've talked to you about, I want to talk to you. Let's talk. Let's have some real talk. In the United States, 220,000 women are diagnosed with breast cancer each year. 40,000 of them dying. 95% of breast cancer diagnoses are women over 40. 1 in 8 will receive a breast cancer diagnosis in their lifetime. Women and men, because they get breast cancer too, is early detection. Let me also tell you something. When I was diagnosed in 2005, just 14 months prior to that, I had a baseline mammogram. That baseline was clear. 14 months later, the breast cancer had ravaged through both of my breasts, requiring me to have a bilateral mastectomy. So let me just reiterate, early detection is the key, because early detection saved my life. I'll talk to you about my tragedies. Now, I want to talk to you about my triumphs. How I have moved from the darkness of my tragedies into the light of my triumphs. Because when God says you are healed of that thing. I can tell you, and I'm a little hesitant because I'm not sure if you're ready for it, but I'm going to give it to you anyways. This one tragedy is just one. My youngest son, at the age of 14, had a liver and kidney transplant. The doctor said you was only going to get 18 months out of that kidney. 5 years later, the kidney is still going strong. My brother was shot twice in the head for being a good Samaritan. He lost an eye. 7 days after being shot twice in the head, my brother walked out of the hospital on his own accord. My grandbaby, my daughter's only in her first child was in a tragic accident. She was put on life support. Instead of her organs being buried with her, we made a decision for her organs to be donated so that someone else could live. So when I talk about tragedy and the triumph, it's not figurative, it's literal. You have to be able to understand the workings of healing inside, where you're constantly readjusting and making yourself in that light of triumph. So along with that, let me give you my pearls of wisdom. Number one, I had to change this. Tanja had to change how she viewed breast cancer. She had to stop speaking into the atmosphere that I'm a victim. I had to stop being shameful of my diagnosis. This is what I call getting my life back. Number two, I had to find that special place in my life that I could call all mine. And when my kids, don't tell nobody, y'all, but when my kids were younger, I would wash and fold clothes. I would go into the laundry room. I can guarantee you they were not coming in there because they knew that mama was going to come and go take them clothes upstairs. So I didn't worry about that. But that was my time. Even just 5 minutes. Now, since my kids are older, I have an emotional support dog. During this time, I have the best thoughts. I come up with the best idea. This is what I call survival mode. Number three, I joined a breast cancer support group. Now, don't get me wrong now. I'm going to be honest. It was an intervention with my husband and my boss. They recognized that I needed help. They recognized that I needed help. I knew I needed help, but I was afraid to ask. During these times, it was an opportunity for me to express myself with other women who were just like me, going through breast cancer or going through any kind of cancer. There was no fear. During this time, I also learned that I had a voice. So now I coach, I speak, and I help other individuals move from the tragedy of their life to the triumph by inspiring, educating, and helping with change. This is what I call, I don't have to explain myself. Number 4, I didn't realize it at the time, but journaling was so therapeutic. Yeah, I remember back in the days, it wasn't called journaling, but you had a diary. My earliest memory of my diary was back in 1980. So little did I know, I've been healing myself for a very long time and didn't even know it. This is what I call, I have a book. Now, with all of this, take one something and incorporate it into your life so that you can move from the tragedies of your life to the triumph. My granny, Willie Mae Harris, she taught me how to pray. She taught me to have faith in God. If you want to get out of the tragedy and darkness of your life, you got to plug into a different energy. Whatever inner God, whatever inner faith, whatever higher calling, that's it. Without it is living in the absence of light. Thank you, Granny.